Right guys, we made it to the weekend and we are back for our championship score predictions. Let's jump into them. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Now today's video is going to be split into two parts, I suppose. We've only got 4 championship matches to go ahead and preview ahead of the weekend, but we've got a bunch of FA Cup action also going on, which we're going to be diving into in the second half of today's video. So as always, make sure to get your score predictions in the comments down below. In the FA Cup especially, we do have some quite juicy ties which are involving championship clubs, which I'm interested to see which way you guys are sort of swaying for. As always though, if you do go to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular championship content. And without any further ado, let's hop into the championship games first of all. And so starting out with tonight's game, it's Birmingham going up against Sheffield United at St Andrews. Interesting game. Birmingham had quite the dramatic one against Derby last time out, and for I'd say about 60-65 minutes of that match, I actually thought looked pretty good. In terms of the first hour of that match, I think it's the best we've seen of Birmingham in quite some time. Hogan and Lyle Taylor seem to be linking up quite well. Ryan Wood's absolutely running the show in midfield. It's just that as the game went on, maybe a little bit of poor game management and things like that, a little bit of clumsiness at the back, ultimately led Derby getting back into the match. But Birmingham have certainly had a goal threat about them lately. I think in their last 7 matches, both teams have scored in each of them, so clearly a lot of goals are going in at either end for Birmingham at the moment, and that's kind of where their problems are lying, in at their back line. For Sheffield United, Sheff Utd fans will be hopeful that it won't be all too long before Morgan Gibbs-White is fully back up and going. I know that he's back in full training at the moment, but by the sounds of things and what Paul Heckingbottom's been saying, it will take him a little bit of time to fully get back up to match speed, but it's looking like sooner rather than later we'll see him back in the matchday squads, which will be a massive booster for Sheffield United heading into the second end of the season. And for a score prediction in this one, I think it is just Sheff United that I am edging towards. I'm going to go 2-1 to the Blades in this game, with FIFA going 2-0 Sheff United. I do think Birmingham have got a goal in them though. Next up then, and to Bloomfield Road for Blackpool up against Bristol City. Now, I think this is a pretty tough game to go ahead and predict, to be honest with you. Bristol City came to Deepdale last weekend, and for all that it's worth, I actually thought they'd look really good in that game, especially going forward for large parts of it. They were causing us all sorts of problems. Masengo really good in midfield, and that forward 3 that we've praised quite a bit lately, we're all looking quite sharp and they're all sort of bouncing off each other quite well. The problem for Bristol City has come at the other end of the pitch, particularly later on into matches, but it's highlighted by the fact that in Bristol City's last 4 matches there's been 20 goals scored going either way. If we compare that to Blackpool's last 4 matches, only 7 goals have gone in. So Blackpool keep things a lot tighter. That was evident last weekend at Craven Cottage as they got a brilliant point against Fulham, had to sort of defend and dig in for large parts of that one, but the quality that Bowler had going forward, and they had a couple of other breakaways in that game as well, was enough for them to get the point in the end. I think that with the nature of Bristol City at the moment and how they're playing, I do think there'll be goals in this one. They've obviously brought Tim Close in to try and sort of shore things up at the back for the rest of the season, but I do see Blackpool getting at least 1 goal, maybe 2. When Bristol City are in town, they bring the goals at the moment, so I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in that game. FIFA's going for a 1-1 draw. I think that has the potential to be a decent watch. Next up then, we go to Hull up against Preston. I will be going to this one this weekend, and there just seems to be a real sort of buzz and atmosphere around Hull, so I'm excited to sort of experience that firsthand. Listen, in the league at the moment, they're on an absolute roll. They've won their last 3 matches and come through some pretty tough games in that time as well. I think that with the deadline day deals they got over the line in the end, that's only gone ahead and sort of boosted the morale around the club even more. I think that Preston are walking into a really tough match here. Preston obviously were in midweek action. We had quite a bland game in the end, 0-0 draw against Millwall. Wasn't all too much in that one to separate the two sides. Ben Whiteman obviously having the golden opportunity from the penalty spot, but that hit the post. I do think we'll probably shuffle the pack a little bit coming into this one. We've got the added boost of Daniel Johnson coming back from international duty. I think we've missed his sort of creativity in the middle for the 3 games that he's been away for. But with the mood around Hull at the moment, Preston maybe looking a little bit jaded in midweek, and Hull having that extra recovery. I think a lot of things here are playing into Hull's hands, and I think that for that reason they may get the better of North End in this one. I think the last time I went to Hull they put 4 goals past us, so I'm hoping the history isn't going to repeat itself in this one. but I've got a bad feeling that Hull may come away with all 3 points in this game. I'm going to go 2-0 Hull and hope that the boys prove me wrong, with FIFA going 1-0 Hull. And as the last championship game we've got going on over the weekend, we go to Swansea up against Blackburn, and everything on paper, this looks like a decent game for Blackburn to sort of get back to winning ways for. Last time out was a solid point, don't get me wrong, against Luton with the players they sort of had available for that one. It's looking like it'll be a much stronger Blackburn side coming into this one as well, with Joe Rothwell probably back in the frame now after he didn't get his deadline day move. Ben Brereton back in for selection as well, although Tony Mowbray did sort of say that he'd make a decision later on whether Brereton will feature in this game, as obviously it's quite the journey coming over and back from Chile. Swansea haven't been great recently, and I suppose it's somewhat coincided with the whole Jamie Patterson situation and things like that, but their goal threat has seriously dried up lately. They've only scored 1 goal in their last 4 matches. Interestingly enough, and everything that's coming out at the moment, it does seem like Jamie Patterson is on his way back. I think that he's back, or due back, in first team training after recently training with the under-23. So you'd think that would only be a little bit of more positivity coming for Swansea in terms of having a little bit more of a threat about them in the final third, but I can't help but feel like this is a decent and quite winnable game here for Blackburn, the way Swansea have been going recently. So, score prediction, I'm going to go 2-0 Blackburn. FIFA's going 1-0 Blackburn. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one, that. But there are all the championship games we got going on over the weekend. Now, without any further ado, let's hop over into the FA Cup action. And so, starting out with tonight's game at Old Trafford, it's Manchester United going up against Middlesbrough. Really excited to see this game. Now, I think Middlesbrough will give United a real run for their money in this one. By the sounds of things, Man United won't be at full strength going into this game, although it is looking like Paul Pogba will be back in contention for the United squad. It's going to be interesting to see, not just from Middlesbrough's point of view, but every other championship side that's in FA Cup action this weekend, how sort of full strength they go, because we do have a full round of midweek fixtures coming up, which I'm sure all the managers will have one eye on, and Middlesbrough have quite an important game coming up against QPR. But listen, it's going to be a packed out away, and I think 5,000 Middlesbrough fans go into this one. By the sounds of things, you know, Chris Wilder wants to go at this game for Manchester United, so I'm expecting Middlesbrough to go full strength. My gut feeling says that United will just about do this. I'm going to go 2-1 Man United, but I do think that Middlesbrough will give a good account of themselves. FIFA's going 2-0 Man United. Next up then, and we've got an old championship tie going on between Huddersfield and Barnsley. Both sides were in midweek action. Huddersfield getting past Derby in the end. They played the majority of that game up against 10 men, with Richard Stearman being sent off on the 3-minute mark. And it did look at one stage like Derby would be able to hold out for the goalless draw, but eventually Huddersfield's pressure paying off with 2 goals coming after the 70-minute mark. Going up against Barnsley, you'd expect Huddersfield to be coming into this one with a certain degree of confidence. It was another loss for Barnsley in midweek in what seemed like a bit of a crunch match for them. You know, we spoke about that Bournemouth game, how there was a bit of an uptrend in terms of performance levels, albeit they didn't get a result from that game. They really needed something from that one against Cardiff, didn't they? It didn't happen in the end. Uche Piazzu's goal ultimately sending them to another defeat. I think it's probably Huddersfield who I'm fancying for this game. I think that if both teams are to shuffle the pack a little bit, it's probably Huddersfield who are a little bit more reliable in that sense. So, going to go 2-0 Huddersfield for this game. FIFA's going 1-0 Huddersfield. Next up then, and to the Etihad, and this game has the potential to be an absolute blockbuster. Man City, the football they play, the goals they score, going up against this Fulham side who, I mean, they're already in the 70s for league goals scored so far this season. Surely there has to be goals guaranteed in this game right here. I do think that because Man City got knocked out of the EFL Cup, you know, usually that's a guaranteed trophy for them every year. They're going to take the FA Cup maybe a little bit more seriously this time around. Fulham will be no mugs though, and while they can be a little bit lackadaisical at the back, you know, we probably saw that with the goal they gave away against Blackpool, a little bit of a miscommunication at the back in that sense. They do have an abundance of goals going forward for them, and in terms of Fulham and Marco Silva, I think it will be the case where they go into this one and think attack is the best form of defence, which will probably leave some holes in their back line. I am expecting Man City to bury quite a few in this one, but Fulham are no mugs at the moment, and with the confidence they're playing at, I'd just like to see two sides properly going for each other in this one. For a score prediction, I'm going to go 4-2 Man City. I do think Fulham will have that goal threat about them, but Man City are just operating on a different level, aren't they? So I'm going to go 4-2 Man City for that game. FIFA's going 2-1 Man City. Next then we go to an old Championship FA Cup tie for Peterborough up against QPR. These old Championship ties are pretty tough to call really, because we don't know how each sides are going to be going into this one in terms of the strength of the lineup and things like that. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe for a side like Peterborough, especially down at the bottom, to go strong in a game like this and try and build a little bit of momentum, but both sides have quite crunch matches coming up in midweek. QPR have got quite a tough looking game coming up against Middlesbrough, and Peterborough have got what seemingly like a must-win game against Cardiff. So both teams may have one eye on those Championship games in midweek, but just from what we've seen from each of them so far this season, I think it is probably QPR who I'm going to have to edge towards in this one. They had a little bit of a run in the League Cup as well, didn't they? They got to the 4th round in that one, and I'm going to back QPR to get through this round here. I'm going to go 2-1 QPR in this game, with FIFA going for a 1-1 draw. Next then, and to Southampton up against Coventry. Now this game has the makings of quite an entertaining one in my view. Coventry taking a massive follow into this one. I think about 5,000 fans go into it. Southampton were quite an entertaining side to watch in the last round of the Cup as well, with that 3-2 win they had over Swansea. In general, Southampton have picked up a string of decent results in the new year so far. Obviously they had that draw to Man City last time out, and these games are where we get to see the sort of strength in depth that especially those clubs in and around the middle of the Premier League really have. I expect Coventry will probably go almost maybe full strength for this one, and I do think that they'll give them a good game, albeit I think that Southampton and the Premier League quality they've got in depth there may just come in towards the later stages of this game. It's one which I wouldn't surprise to see go the distance, but I'm just going to edge Southampton in that one, I think, for a 2-1 home win. FIFA's going 2-0 Cov. Would be a great atmosphere if they pull that one off. Next then for Stoke up against Wigan. This one's an interesting game. Wigan have already beaten a couple of Championship sides so far this season. Got past Blackburn in the last round earlier on in the season in the League Cup as well. They managed to find their way past Hull. I think they will give Stoke a really good run for their money in this one. It probably won't be all too long perhaps before we're talking about Wigan in the Championship once again. Obviously second in League One at the moment. They've got that accumulation of games in hand as well because of all the games they had cancelled over Christmas. I remember going to Wigan actually in pre-season for a game they had against Preston, and even then I thought they looked pretty good, to be honest, so no surprise to see them up and around the top of League One at the moment. Stoke can be fairly hit and miss. I know they've got a few players who are sort of cup tied for this one, but I'd imagine we may see the first glimpse of Josh Maja for Stoke City in this one. Very excited to see how he gets on for the rest of the season. Not predicted all too many cup upsets so far though, have I? I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this game and then say that Wigan might sneak it on penalties. FIFA's going at 1-0 Wigan. Next then we go to Cambridge up against Luton. This one has the makings of quite an interesting game for me as well. Cambridge obviously involved in one of the shocks of the FA Cup third round with that win at Newcastle 1-0 in the end. Luton, who are going really quite well in the Championship at the moment in terms of the form book, knocking on the door once again for the top 6 after they've won 4 out of their last 6 matches. Yeah, I think this will be quite the entertaining game actually. When it comes to Luton, they were in action in midweek, got past Swansea with a 1-0 win in that one. And in the league after this one, I think they've got some pretty winnable games coming up as well. They've got a game against Barnsley in midweek coming up, which, you know, you'd probably stack Luton as their heavy favourites for that game. I'm going to go for a 5-goal thriller in this one. I think the odds may just tip in Luton's favour. They've got a good feeling about them at the moment. I'm going to go 3-2 Luton in that game, with FIFA going 1-0 Luton. Next up then to Anfield for Liverpool up against Cardiff. Now I can't lie, a part of me is a little bit gutted about all of this because obviously Cardiff beat Northend in the FA Cup third round, and instead of me going to Anfield this weekend, I'm instead off to Hull as it was Cardiff who beat us in that game. But I'm sure that the Cardiff fans are going to have an absolute blast with this one. In the league they picked up some massive results recently, back-to-back wins. They've given themselves a little bit of breathing space now between themselves and the bottom 3 in midweek. Obviously it was a massive win against Barnsley. Another big game coming up for Cardiff in midweek against Peterborough as well. And while Liverpool still won't be at full strength, it's still Liverpool at the end of the day, isn't it? So score prediction for this one, I'm going to go 3-0 Liverpool, I think. FIFA's going 2-0 Liverpool. Next up then, and to the City Ground for Nottingham Forest up against Leicester. Now this one seems to have the makings of a really good game as well. Leicester seem to be scoring quite a few goals at the moment, albeit they are conceding quite a few as well. Of course, they're coming into this one as the current holders of the FA Cup as well. Going up against the Nottingham Forest side though, this could be a potential banana skin. We saw Forest in the last round knock out Arsenal, of course, with a fantastic sort of classic Steve Cooper performance in that game. Spence and Brennan Johnson especially grabbing all the headlines in that one, grabbing with the winner as well. But I think Forest will give Leicester a really good run for their money in this one, albeit Forest were a little bit disappointing last time against Cardiff. Seemed like they sort of ran out of steam a little bit in that one. But what can get you sort of up and going even more than a full sort of crowd behind you? The atmosphere is going to be great for this one, going up against Premier League opposition as well. And Steve Cooper is a tricky manager to come up against. I don't think that any result would particularly shock me in this one, but for the sake of it, we'll go for the upset again, and I'll go 2-1 Nottingham Forest. FIFA's going at 1-0 Leicester. And as our last game to go over, we've got Bournemouth going up against Boreham Wood. No FIFA gameplay for this game, of course, as Boreham Wood aren't actually in FIFA, but it'll be an interesting chance here for maybe Scott Parker to integrate some of those deadline day signings right into the first 11. I'll be interested to see just how many of them are thrown straight in. It seems like a decent opportunity to go ahead and bed some of those players in straight away. Dembele, I think, is the only player who's cup tied and won't be available for this one, so wouldn't be surprised to see a few of the others thrown in. Listen, Bournemouth are the overwhelming favourites coming into this one. I think that they probably do get through this one. Score prediction, I'm going to go 3-1, but what an upset that would be if Boreham would pull it off. But there we have it, guys. Those are my score predictions heading into the weekend. So we've got Championship and FA Cup games to go ahead and preview. Any of the other FA Cup games going on this weekend, feel free to leave your score predictions for those in the comments down below as well. But apart from that, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.